And it's not just this one young lady alone in Iran. There are hundreds and thousands of women across the world who have experienced the reality of the hijab firsthand, and many of them, for very reason, have decided to give it up. What does the concept of choice mean to them? I want you to listen to our next guest, Yasmin Mohammed, who calls out the whole concept of choice in this context as a vicious lie. All right, joining us is now somebody who has thrown off the hijab and is very, very vocal about what it represents to her and to women in general. Yasmin Mohammed, thank you very much for speaking to us. You know, it's almost as if the worst fears that you had spoken of have come true. How do you see what has happened to Mahsa in particular and to women in Iran in general right now?
Well, unfortunately, what happened to Mahsa, obviously is an incredible tragedy. And I'm very happy that you're having me on to talk about it today. I think that it's something that has been happening all over the world for years and years, and too many of us have been turning a blind eye to that. Obviously, this situation is a little bit different because she is a Kurdish Iranian woman, and because she was beaten to death by the religious police in Iran, specifically over hijab. They felt that she wasn't wearing her hijab properly. But, girls have been murdered all over the world for the same reason countless times. In Algeria, there was a whole decade, they call it the dark decade, where girls were being killed by Islamists because of the hijab. Here in Canada, we've had girls who've been killed over the hijab. I'm sure in India, you've had girls who've been killed over the hijab. In Iraq, in Pakistan, obviously in Afghanistan, this is a worldwide issue in any, not just Muslim majority country, but in any country that has Muslim extremists living in it who feel that they need to force this on their daughters, on their families, on their communities, on their societies. And they do not care about personal freedom. And, it's really something that as you said, we've been screaming about this for years and years and years. And, this heartbreaking case with Mahsa is almost too much to bear.
Do you think that in the most unfortunate way, it has completely exposed this fig leaf of how hijab is a choice?
Yes. I hope that what you're saying is true. I hope that people can see that, the word choice in this context is such a vicious lie. It is such a horrible thing to pretend that something that gets women attacked with acid, abused, tortured, imprisoned, killed is a choice. You have to look at the context of the choice when these girls are making the choice to wear hijab. What is the context? What are their choices? Their choices are wear this or suffer the consequences. You'll suffer the consequences here on earth, or you'll suffer the consequences of burning in hell for eternity. Either way, it's a threat. And you can very clearly see that girls, when they choose to wear the hijab, they are celebrated. And when they choose to take off the hijab, they are murdered. So choice works two ways. It doesn't just mean that you have the choice to listen to us or else, because that's exactly the choice that we get with hijab.
But, and we are still grappling with this issue because, ironically, the hijab in schools is being challenged in our Supreme Court right now. That hearing is underway. And the same people who are supporting women in Iran, throwing off their hijab, burning their hijab, are here telling adolescent girls, you're free. It's your choice to wear a hijab to school. How do you see this?
I see that really as privilege. I see that as people not understanding the context. They're not understanding indoctrination. So sure, it can be, we can say it's a choice, but the truth is it's not a choice. The hijab is put on girls at a very young age, and we are told, if you want to be a good, pure, clean girl, then you wear this. And if you want to be a filthy, dirty whore, then don't wear it. And then they try to pretend after that it's a choice. Well, for some people, they get the choice. Do I want to wear a skirt today? Do I want to wear a dress? Do I want to wear pants? And so they just cannot comprehend that for the life of a Muslim girl, this word choice does not come into play. Girls quite often here in Canada, and all over the Western world, they wear the hijab when they're leaving their house. And as soon as they get to school, they take it off and they shove it into their bag. They don't want to wear it. We don't want to be forced into clothing that you have decided that we need to wear to keep us modest so that we're not harassed or raped by criminals. That's victim blaming. These are very basic feminist ideals. And to pretend that these women who are in these situations have the free choice, like I said earlier, it's not just a lie, but it's a vicious lie. It's so obvious that there is no choice in this context.
But then how does one understand hundreds and thousands of women, some of them very accomplished, by the way? They are women who have participated in the Olympics wearing a hijab. Athletes, they are achievers, they are educated, they are sophisticated, and they are saying, this is my agency. I will be, in the House of Representatives, I will wear my hijab. I'm not stupid.
Yes.
Some Maulvi is not telling me that you will burn in hell. I studied.
Yeah. Okay, so two responses to that question. First of all, when I wore hijab and when I wore niqab, I also said it was a choice because I didn't want people to look at me and to recognize me as a disempowered woman who doesn't even have the ability to choose what she puts on her own body. That was embarrassing. That would be humiliating. I didn't want to admit that even to myself, let alone to other people. So I would not admit that it wasn't a choice. Secondly, we have to remember throughout history, women have always supported the patriarchy. This is nothing new. Even in England, when women were fighting for the right to vote 100 years ago, you had women fighting sometimes even louder than the men, saying, no, we shouldn't vote. We're not capable. We're not intelligent enough. We're not able to vote. We should leave that to the men. There's always women who are willing to support the patriarchy. Maybe it's out of fear. Maybe it's because they know that this is where the power is. So they just want to support the powerful so that they can ride on the coattails, even if it means that they're subjugating themselves and their sisters and their daughters. Different people make different decisions. But the important thing here is that we need to support the feminists. We need to support the open-minded people who are fighting for equality, that are fighting for freedom. Those are the people that we need to stand by.
What about the argument that you keep raking this up, you keep demonizing a community, and you fan the Islamophobia that's as it is spreading?
Well, I was born and raised a Muslim. I lived as a Muslim longer than I was not a Muslim. The last thing in the world I want to do is bring hate to anybody. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring light to this situation. But not just with my organization, Free Hearts, Free Minds, or with my show, Forgotten Feminists, but, every single day I'm interacting with women all over the world who are sharing their stories with me and who are so grateful that I'm speaking out for them. These are women who are in situations where they will be murdered if they open their mouth. And so there are millions and millions of women who are living the same life that I used to be living. And I was also silenced. I denounced Islam for 15 years before I finally spoke up and started to write my book. 15 years I was silent. That's how scared I was. People can't understand the terrifying fear. I mean, you should be able to understand. You can see the terrorism and the violence. You know about the honor killings. You understand how difficult this is for a woman to speak out. And so I feel compelled to do this. I feel like I have a responsibility to do this because I was silenced for so long and I know what that feels like. And if I had somebody who could speak up for me and who could help me, I would have appreciated that so much. And that's what I'm trying to be for all of those women.
Do you think that what is happening in Iran could be a tipping point, or are we so compelled, drawn by a false sense of what liberal values are, to keep in a strange way rationalizing and glorifying hijab or other kinds of head covers?
I hope that it is a tipping point. I hope that you're right. But I fear that the latter part of your statement may be correct, because we have seen things like this so many times. We have seen men walking around with their decapitated wife's head in her hand and videos of it. And he talks about, I took off her head because she was immodest and dressing like Westerners. We've seen these kinds of things before. And, you know, the news cycle just continues and people forget, and then they go off and they talk about the next thing. And, you know, this is something that unfortunately is not important enough to a lot of powerful people. You know, it's really sad to see. We have, you know, a news show in America called 60 Minutes, which is incredibly popular. It's always been respected for decades and decades. And even the women who are interviewing Iranians on that show, they put a hijab on. They choose to subjugate themselves. They choose to cover their shame when they are addressing a man. You know what I mean? These are powerful women in powerful positions. We see politicians, we see leaders. You know, they could be standing up. They could be saying no, even for themselves. They don't even have to speak for Iranian women or for the other women around the world. But stand up for yourself, you know, have some dignity, have some integrity. At least say no for yourself. I will not subjugate myself. But they can't even defend themselves, protect themselves. So, you know, it's really sad, but we don't expect much from them.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because in the recent past in India, as a comparison, there were two sportswomen who refused to participate in sporting events in the Middle East because they were required to cover their head. They decided to opt out instead. That being said, it's very interesting when we are told again and again that this is an article of faith. Do you think that here faith is being misused and misquoted to actually
100%.
cloak fundamentalism? This is not really a part of faith, is it?
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%, you're correct. Nowhere in the Quran does it describe how a woman is supposed to cover her hair or cover her face or this, you know, what they're making women do and killing women over. You know, you have to, it's important to understand that there's so many details in Islam. There's edicts that will tell you how to cut your toenails. There's edicts that will tell you how to wash yourself when you go to the bathroom. But there's nothing about the hijab. So, of course, it wasn't something that was so important that we're going to kill people over. You know what I mean? This is misogyny. This is patriarchy. This is vicious, evil men controlling women and using religion as the bludgeon.
And if there is really true feminism, it should not allow itself to be hijacked by fundamentalism and lulled into the sense of false choice. Yasmin, thank you very much, as always, for speaking to us and speaking up.